Wednesday, February 18th, 2015, and you're listening to SYN Boldly, the podcast, the Sign Your Name Project. I'm your host, Trey Comstock, and with me, as ever, is Stephen Doss.
Once more, into the brink we go.
Indeed, and into the brink we are going. See, I have crossed on my forehead because it's a religious holiday, and so we are going to spend our time in discussion of Lent. And Ash Wednesday, thanks.
One of the two. It's not like they're interchangeable or anything.
One's part of the other. It's a part to the whole kind of thing.
You can't have one without the other. Lent and ashes.
Yep, you really invested in that one.
Oh, if I was going to go for it, I need to go like 100%.
So speaking of 100%, are you going to go 100% for Lent?
I'm going to try to. I give myself 2 weeks before I end up buying something with high fructose corn syrup in it or something with hyper-processed sugars. That's what I've decided to give up for Lent. A, because it's kind of a self-help Lent, and B, because, those things are bad for the environment. A lot of times they're from huge multinational corporations that exploit impoverished workers.
Generally speaking, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just me taking into account that the things that I buy, and this is just one small thing, there's probably millions of other things that we buy that are just as bad. But this is me taking into account that what I buy has a bigger impact than just my waistline.
Sure.
So that's what I want Lent to remind me of this year, is that I live in a country where I have, fortunately the right to choose to let my dollars go to things that are a bit more helpful.
And you're also at an economic level where you can kind of more easily make those choices.
About time.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I mean, when your options get limited, it's different. But, you can afford to make different choices. And so I think, it is an interesting Lenten discipline to essentially vote with your dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a different take. I always am really hesitant about Lenten disciplines that just come off as New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
I took this class last semester on preaching secularity, but it's basically a class on the scholar called Charles Taylor. And one of kind of the cruxes of Charles Taylor's argument is that we kind of take like festive seasons and flatten them down so that to just being things we should always do. So Lent becomes not a festive season where we do something special for Lent. During Lent, we just do something we should always be doing.
Yep.
And he's super crotchety and Catholic, and so he gets really hesitant about that. As kind of a way of understanding that, this kind of Western paradigm of secularity is creeping into our understand of festive Christianity, which is really technical argument, and really, I tend to agree with Taylor on that. So I have been kind of preaching this idea of Lent for the past couple weeks. We've been kind of ramping up for Lent because my people are super, I love them. They're super Southern Baptist in their upbringing. And so all of these Catholic ideas like Lent, like the Christian year that isn't Christmas, is really kind of, and not foreign, because, some of them have been Methodists for a long time, but kind of something that sets them apart from the culture they live in. And so I to spend a lot of time talking about now, no, this is not, we're not being Catholic. We're just living a Christian year where we celebrate the life of Christ in different seasons, trying to really explain it. And the way I've been pitching Lent this year is tying it to Wesley's idea of sanctification. That Lent is a time of sanctification, moving towards, that prepares us for resurrection and Pentecost. So resurrection as celebration or justification, and then Pentecost as ascending forth. that there's an equipping that is Lent for the sending forth that is Pentecost, and trying to link all those things together.
How very Catholic of you.
Yeah, yes, or Wesleyan is kind of where I was going with this. Good Wesleyan theology. So I've been repeatedly challenging, like, what, rather than giving something up, what is something you can do? What is a practice you can take on? Is it Bible study? Is it praying in silence? Is it carrying coats around and distributing them to the homeless who are currently freezing? We're doing a lot of praying for the homeless now, which is good. That's new. So trying to think about it like that, as this kind of intentional practice that really only makes sense during Lent, that you wouldn't want to do the whole year round, but you really want to do now as this special intentional period of, focusing on this idea of sanctification.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I've added in line with that is, so we have this little book of devotions that is sent out. I think it's by whoever is the minister of discipleship at Bethel United Methodist Church, and I think Nashville, or Belmont United Methodist Church in Nashville.
Sure.
I don't know what she or he, I didn't really say, wants us to do with it, but I'm going to do Lectio Divina.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So I'm going to choose one of the passages, and I'm just going to read it repeatedly and over again, and just see what comes out at me, what's something that I can get from it. And I think that's something I need to do, because I like doing the whole social justice-y, get out there and do this stuff. But I think a lot of times we get tied up in the social justice-y stuff that we forget about the spirituality stuff, and that's how we stay healthy, if you catch my drift.
I mean, to a certain extent, that was my sermon on Sunday. Was linking...
well, then we're done here. If you have any questions,
sermon will be up on the site at some point in history. I'm so bad about getting this posted. I tend to do it 6 or 7 week lumps of sermons, which is not always helpful. But so I preached on Ephesians 6, the full armor of God. So I don't think I actually told my congregation this, but it was actually my assigned text for preaching. It was not the lectionary text. But I basically looked at the full armor of God as this idea of some of them are virtues, right? Faith and truth and righteousness. And those come with intentional preparation. So there's kind of practices, those self-care practices, those, spiritual growth practices. And that's what opens us up to take divine action. But those two things are linked, and you can't separate them. This idea of actually living like a life with God and then taking action through the Holy Spirit. So it sounds a lot like what you're saying about Lectio, that you don't want to ignore that piece of it.
Exactly. Because I think we have a tendency to ignore it, and Lent is a good time to remember, as a Christian, why you're doing certain things. You're doing it. Yeah.
Or you're to do them at all.
Or but you're trying to, just stop for a minute and see. Okay, I'm going to do this because I believe in this person who lived a perfect life for others and then gave himself up, a little begrudgingly, but that's because we believe in the fully human part as well. I think, he had, like anyone who's about to do something very difficult, he hit a wall. In a very human way. And, I always like that because it says, to struggle with something isn't itself sinful, right? Because if Christ is sinless and Christ struggled with these things, that is to say that's just human. That's just natural. And, through God's strength, we can overcome these things. But to have these feelings of doubt or struggle, or for it to be difficult to do something, makes us, no worse than Jesus. Exactly. I like being no worse than Jesus.
Right. That's why I said it that way. That It's not such a bad position to be in, as being no worse than Jesus, and
No worse than the baby Jesus.
right. It's that's not so bad.
No, it's not. And I think, we need to realize that we're called to be Christ-like. We're not called to be Christ, as I always tell my wife when she gets discouraged. Because it's something we need to hear.
Sure, absolutely. For me personally, I have not come up with what my Lenten discipline is going to be yet. I don't. I have a couple more hours to figure. I usually give myself till midnight on Ash Wednesday to figure it out, because I don't know. I think about wanting to take on some intentional practice. I think that's where I want to be. Is I want to take something on, not give something up.
Right.
And one of the things I thought about is, I've always wanted to try fasting on Fridays. A lot of Christians around the world and a lot of global Methodists do this kind of Friday fast as part of their spiritual formation. But then I realize, okay, that's great, but I have to get work done on Fridays. And usually Friday is my day to get caught up on academic work, and I wouldn't be able to do academic work in the morning if I hadn't eaten. So that's, not, I got to be able to fuel my, mind to be able to do this kind of work. So I really am kind of stuck for this year on, what to do. Because previously I've always given something up. One year I gave up swearing, or I would always give up through elementary school, middle school, and high school. I always give up pizza. Well, I don't eat all that much pizza, so this isn't, difficult. And so I just, it's not that I live some weirdly perfect life. It's just, my spiritual practices are so utterly bankrupt that I struggle to come up with what's one that makes sense for me, that would actually be meaningful and is not just adding on one more thing to do. Because the last thing I need in my life is just another thing I feel bad about having not done.
Right. I think when Lent becomes something that just makes you feel bad, you're missing the point of Lent.
Sure.
It's not designed... Well, yes, you're thinking about some pretty intensely sad things that are about to happen, but it's not meant to be something that just depresses you.
Yeah. I don't know.
Or maybe it is. We may agree to disagree on this one.
I think you're right. I don't know what I'm going to do for Lent. I'm just stuck in this place of I don't want to end up with something that I just kind of feel bad about. Because you want to start the difference between penitence, but not just like guilt.
Yeah, you leave that to the Lutherans,
right? Or the certain branches of the Presbyterians.
Yeah,
only certain branches of the Presbyterians, but some of them, or the historical Catholic guilt that runs deep.
Right.
This is all very offensive.
No offense to our Catholic friends and our Presbyterian friends and all that stuff. We're just making a joke. We're using joking, stereotypes.
Right, and Wesleyans are so action focused they lose sight of all spiritual practice.
And we do, and that's what I'm trying to get back to.
Sure, yeah. You're not wrong on that. It's just finding a spiritual practice that's functional and doesn't become just an agenda item.
Right.
Because I'm good at accomplishing agenda items. I had 14 hours worth of agenda items today. This happens to be my last one of the day, but this, and,
but it's still on the agenda.
Right. And, I've thought about, maybe finding a worship service that I'm not leading, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, but I'm involved in planning 4 to 6 worship services a week. So it's just like, where do you find time? I do a Sunday morning and a Sunday evening.
Mm-hmm.
I do a Wednesday, a Tuesday, and a Thursday at 11 o'clock. So I don't know. It's how do I be find a discipline that makes me being a better steward of my time and not just finding something else that sucks time away from, like, spending time with my family, which, is usually what gets eaten into.
Right. And maybe that is your Lenten practice is spending more time with your family.
It's, I've thought about that. I've just kind of...
We need to watch out when we make, like, church the main focus of Lent. I know that sounds weird.
Nah, that makes sense.
But, you've got to watch out that it's balance.
Sure.
I think Lent is a very good time to get your life in balance. I know sometimes it's hard, and sometimes we can easily say, oh, well, you say that, it's so easy for you, but it's not. Balance is something that's hard, especially in a very capitalist society where,
God, yeah.
like I keep telling you, it's the go-go 90s.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, right. And I think the church and really the whole nonprofit sector has evolved this way. But you certainly look at the United Methodist Church, it is this huge institutional bureaucracy that looks like that's modeled off of a multinational corporation, right? With franchises.
Yeah.
And so we're very much running on a capitalist model, and what's really valued. I have to log my church attendance every week into a computer system. I have to log the numbers of professions of faith, baptisms, new members, church attendance, how much money we take in. I have to report this all into a system, which should tell you about a focus of the denomination. That it's this capitalistic of, we must be growing numerically if we are growing.
Right.
Right? That there's not this, how do you quantify devotion? Well, you don't. And maybe metrics, while interesting, when you're trying to make that kind of argument, why are we making that kind of argument? Why are we arguing based on metrics? And why is that our justification? We brought 10,000 people to Jesus. How? What? First of all, we didn't do jack. So let's start there. And second of all, is that really the core number we're supposed to be looking at?
Mm-hmm. And we can get off on a tangent of metrics, and that could be a whole other show because metrics are stupid. I can say that because I'm not part of the clergy.
I mean, I understand why they do it, right? But in the end, metrics are grounded in this thinking of a large institutional bureaucracy.
Right.
And that is the least sustainable part of the United Methodist Church in its current form.
No, it is not.
It's not the least sustainable? What's the least sustainable?
I'm trying to think. It's a pretty good one. Bureaucracy is a good one.
Well, or, just the sheer number of churches we have, right?
Yes. I think the number is going to be the big thing that explodes. Because, again, it's just fatness.
Well, so I look at my little area of North Georgia, right? Middle of nowhere.
Yep.
Within 20 miles of my church, there are 5 or 6 other Methodist churches. Within 20 miles. Let's keep in mind, everyone is driving to church. No one is, only I am walking to church, because it's only a quarter mile across the cornfield.
Right.
Why
it's really
are
awesome
there...
that you live in a cornfield.
There's the Parsonage Cornfield Church. I live next door to cows across the street from a cornfield. It's great.
Did you name the cows yet?
Yes.
What are their names?
Well, we live next door to the bulls, not the cows. And so the really big one is named Hickory Caesar Grindon. It's an allusion to a 1940s mystery series, but it's named Hickory Caesar Grindon. It's a very large bull, and when he gets up close to the fence, I get very nervous. But within my little community, the town of Ringgold's a few thousand. Town of Tunnel Hill is like 800 people, and there are like 6 Methodist churches and twice that number of Baptist churches within a 15-minute drive of my church. How is that sustainable?
Exactly.
I mean, half of the Methodist churches are doing all right, and the other half of them are not doing well at all. And it's, you look at that and go, well, you never want a church community to close.
Definitely not.
At the same time, like, we overbuilt, like, drastically.
Oh yeah, here in Virginia, there is a huge clergy shortage because every little town has a church.
Yeah.
And like here in Arlington, there's a few churches that are doing well, and there's a few churches that aren't. And it's not any of the faults of the clergy. It's just, there was a time when you had to walk to church.
Right. And we built for that time.
Exactly. That time is no longer here.
Well, then we also built for a time when we set the cultural agenda.
Yeah.
And we don't anymore.
No.
We built for a time, when we, as the United Methodist Church specifically, were one of the nation's most powerful institutions, not just one of the nation's larger institutions. Yeah. And that's just not the case. We're not, in some ways we've forfeited the leadership of kind of the Christian voice to the evangelicals, the kind of the focus.
Yeah, because they loud yeller.
Well, they decided to become,
they yell louder.
Historically, they stayed out of politics. They stayed out of the public square.
Right.
And then I guess in the 80s, it's been a long time since I looked at my notes on this, but kind of the 80s, they shifted gears. And they decided they were going to speak publicly, and that radically changed everything in terms of the voice for mainline Protestantism specifically. The Catholics always have kind of their own independent voice. Comes with being Catholic.
Yep.
But the mainline Protestants, we built for this thing of being the nation's Christian voice, and we're not that anymore. Our great, Barack Obama is not calling, our equivalent of Reinhold Niebuhr. He's not calling James Cone. He's not calling James Cone for decisions about foreign policy in the same way that presidents would call Reinhold Niebuhr about decisions about foreign policy.
Right.
These are, James Cone, United Methodist, Reinhold Niebuhr, Presbyterian, but you get it. We're talking about mainline theologians are not being consulted. If the theologians that are being consulted are your focus on the family crowd from the Christian right.
Who are not theologians.
What? I don't know how they self-describe. So we've got off on a tangent, but we did figure out what my Lenten discipline is going to be. I'm going to intentionally spend time with my family.
I think that's a good Lenten discipline.
Yeah, that sounds nice. That sounds relaxing. I just, I don't want, I don't want more work for Lent. Like, I have enough work. I don't need more work for Lent. So this is less work for Lent. This is great. Do you have any feedback? If you want to share your Lenten discipline, SYN boldly at endfear.org, Facebook.com/the Sign Your Name Project, or at SYN boldly on Twitter. And with that, go in peace to love and serve the Lord and end fear by signing your name. Good night. Next week, we dig back into the news.
The news. Oh, the news.
If you loaded a soundboard on your iPad or iPhone, you could hook that into the board you have, and it would play through.
Really?
Think about that, yeah.
Play Rock You Like a Hurricane over and over again.
As long as it's Rock Me Like a Herman Cane.
Oh.